Death. Morbid way to start off a college vlog, I know, but it's something that we'll all experience in our life. The question that we all have to ask ourselves is what we will do in the wake of our death. There are many great people who have died before they could fully complete everything that they wanted to in life, yet they were still able to leave a lasting legacy or impression on the world generations later. Even though we ourselves were not born in this generation, a few people come into mind when we think of lasting impressions on the world. For example, let's talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who fought for the equality of women in the American workforce in 1974, or when she became the second woman ever to serve on the Supreme Court in 1993. Or we can go back 36 years earlier when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was fighting for the equal rights of Black African Americans in the United States, just for us to be able to do something as simple as using the same drinking fountain as white people. Perhaps we could travel back all the way to the 19th century when Henry David Thoreau wrote his book Civil Disobedience about going against and questioning the government in 1849. As I mentioned before, the things that all these influential people have in common is what they left behind in the proceedings of their death. Let's take a look at how what these people left behind are different, yet just as influential as each other. Let's start with HDT and his writings on civil disobedience. A quote I would like to pull from the reading says, "Why these people mean well, they are only ignorant. They would do better if they knew how. Why give your neighbors this pain to treat you as they are not inclined to?" The way that I interpret this quote is that everyone would treat each other differently if they just knew what they were talking about instead of trying to talk about the things that people don't know. People would treat each other with kindness and the way that we should treat each other, that we should have been from the start, but that is just my opinion. However, throughout civil disobedience, HDT brings up the government and how it influenced the way that people treat each other. I find this to be true because it has been proven time and time again throughout history. Whether it was the way that the government treated Black people, women, Jewish people, and people that just didn't look like the current faces of their government. Throughout the article, HDT also mentions how the government is no different than the racist and bigoted people in the world. I stand on the fact that sometimes people should challenge the government and stand up for what they believe in order to get what they want, but to a certain extent. Moving on to another note, let's talk about something slightly less extreme. Dr. MLK always looked for the peaceful solution to getting our freedoms. Instead of going directly against the government and powerful political figures, he suggested that we hit them where it hurts instead, like their pockets, their money, the sole thing that they looked to possess over everyone else in the world. He thought that if we boycotted their stores and the products that were made by them, then they would finally start listening and seeing that we actually had something to say that was important. By marching and peacefully protesting, we were able to change the narrative on Black people and fight for our rights without breaking any laws. In Martin Luther King Jr.'s final speech, he talks about how if he were to be given more time and exactly what he would do with that time. He says, "But I wouldn't stop there. Strangely enough, I would turn to the Almighty and say, if you allow me to live just a few years in the second half of the 20th century, I will be happy." Now, that's a strange statement to make because the world is all messed up and the nation is sick. MLK wanted to see what the world would be like with his influence and the influence of other civil rights leaders. However, in a turn of irony, after giving this inspirational speech, MLK was assassinated on the balcony of his hotel. Like many other leaders, he did not get to see the full effects of his influence, but he did leave a lasting impact on the world that we live in today. That is the point I want to make today. No matter how or when you die, are you making an impact on the people that you meet today? Are you fighting for the things that you believe in? And if not, when will you start? I say make it today. Make it now. Be a leader. Be a change maker. Thank you all for listening to my TED Talk.